Hello and welcome to the November Decoder Dialogue. My name is Amina Macaulay, the Climate Education Program Manager at News Decoder. For those joining us for the first time, News Decoder is an educational nonprofit headquartered in Paris, France. Our mission is to empower young people to be informed, active citizens and changemakers, locally, nationally, and globally. We use journalism and media skills to help young people deepen their understanding of the world and its interconnectedness, develop their critical thinking, and hone their voices and viewpoints. In our monthly Decoder Dialogue series, we convene youth and professionals around a virtual round table to discuss and decode the big topics on their minds. Before we get into today's discussion on climate action, just a few logistic notes. So this webinar is being recorded and will be shared to News Decoder's website in the coming days. We'll open with questions and discussion among our panelists, and then we'll open the floor to a Q&A with the audience. We aim to truly make this a dialogue, so we encourage you to submit questions and comments to the Q&A tab. You can also upvote which questions to ask our panelists. So today, off the back of COP29, we're exploring the topic of climate action and what real significant climate action is. We're going to hear from Sarah and Candelaria in Colombia, Amma in the US, Anderson in Rwanda, and Valentina in Belgium about what we can do as young people, as students, to make a meaningful difference in limiting global warming. And on our panel, we also have a visiting expert, Karo Krakowiak from Poland, who is a sustainability consultant focusing on nature-based solutions, regenerative agriculture, and carbon offsets. I myself have a background in climate journalism and education, and at News Decoder, I help manage our project on climate journalism education called EYES, Empowering Youth Through Environmental Storytelling. Through the curriculum that we're developing, we hope to help students be critical of what they can do themselves and in their communities to make a change, and to move this beyond recycling and other individual lifestyle changes and towards systemic solutions. So we have a lot to get through today, and we hope to leave plenty of time for audience questions at the end. So let's get straight into it. We're going to start with a poll. So you'll have 30 seconds to answer this question. It should come up on your screens now. Do you think individual lifestyle changes can have a meaningful impact on climate change? All right, 15 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so popular answer here. So 90% of and 10% said no. I'm sure we can get into that discussion a little bit later. And then I'll ask again at the end and we'll see whether there's been a change. Okay, so let's get started. Let's bring in our student panelists. So Sarah and Candelaria, I'm going to ask you about your experiences at COP. I'll begin with you, Sarah. So you have said that at your experience at COP16, the United Nations Biodiversity Conference, which was in Colombia this year, you said that you were inspired by discussions on the importance of conserving Indigenous lands and integrating traditional knowledge into biodiversity protection strategies. You say that you highly value the power of local community efforts in driving change and are yourself involved in organizing educational workshops on climate action at home in Colombia. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experience at COP? And if this has inspired you further on your view of local community projects?
Well, it was like a pretty unique experience, like being able to talk with people all around the world. And also, like, for example, in my group, I had this friend, Sean, that was part of an indigenous community. So he brought us like his perspective on how can this like make really change. And also like we have to be able to listen to those people that are the ones like most care about and most are known for like taking care of the planet and taking care of their homes, because that is like his actual home. So he brought us like, he opened our eyes on how can we make that change with like little steps, but eventually they're going to become like something really big.
Fantastic, thank you. And Candelaria, you were in Baku at COP29. Can you tell us about your experience and how you walked away feeling?
Well, I felt like it was an amazing experience. I met a lot of different people, like not only my age, but a lot of like are truly trying to make proposals and to actually see them through.
We lost you a little bit there.
People that's trying to like coordinate next in Brazil to implement a lot of more youth. And
I think maybe your connection
physical.
there is, oh, sorry.
Yes, we talk station is affecting a lot of people, but have you?
Okay.
Yeah, hold on.
No worries. I'll move on to some of the other student panelists and then we can come back to you. How about that?
Yeah, I think that'd be
All right. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you. So you're at the Thatcher School in California, but you grew up in Nigeria. Can you tell us about how you have seen climate change affect Nigerian communities and why you believe that education is so important in a first step of climate action?
Thank you. So I believe that obviously Western countries are more industrialized. After the Industrial Revolution, they rely a lot on manufacturing. So they usually ship most of the garbage or waste to other developing countries so they can decide what to do with that waste. But I think that developing countries bear the brunt of climate change, but they are not prepared on how to solve climate change for a couple of reasons. The first is the UN Sustainable Goals say that if you don't have like the first six goals, like if a country can't attain those goals, like no poverty, zero hunger, education, well-being, then they won't be able to solve climate change and everything else. Because I think climate change, being able to um, be interested in climate action is a privilege. So most of these developing countries don't know how to solve climate change. And usually in Nigeria, what happens is when there's water scarcity, high temperatures, they usually rely on girls and young women to go out, walk miles and miles to get to the nearest like water source to get water and then come back. They leave early in the morning, return late at night, and then they not only does this affect them physically and mentally, they're unable to go to school, which continues to perpetuate the cycle of discrimination because girls can't lack education. And obviously, when they lack education, then they usually end up getting married off. And that's how child marriages continue. So there's this like vicious cycle continuing because most of these developing countries don't really know how to solve climate change and be part of that whole movement. And why I think education is incredibly important is because once people are educated about the issue of climate change, then they might be willing to know what to do. As the poll said earlier, I think when individuals can, every meaningful step an individual takes in the grand scheme of things improves the environment. So when people are educated about the issue, then they can move forward. So I think education is the priority and the first step. Yes.
Right. And you think that education is just as important in global North countries as in global South countries. So education across the world. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so Valentina, on the subject of education, you go to the Climate Academy, or you're a student at the Climate Academy at the European Schools of Brussels, the European School of Brussels too. Can you tell us a little bit about the approach of the Climate Academy and what you've learned there in terms of what real climate action is and how this plays out in your own life?
Yeah, of course. So I'm part of the Climate Academy, like you said, here in Brussels. It started as a like lunchtime club at my school, but has since then become a nonprofit organization that has, I think, close to 50 academies around the world. So in India, there's new ones coming up in Australia, in Italy, in Los Angeles, all over the world. And the idea of it is to provide the youth of today, so 16, 17-year-olds, with a systemic understanding of climate change. So to move away from this focus on individual action, so like this pressure on recycling and all that kind of stuff, and move towards pushing like politicians and pushing business owners to provide meaningful change. So it covers all climate change through a various array of topics, from philosophy to science to arts, geology, geography, history, all these different facets to it, which provides like a very comprehensive understanding of what climate change actually is and what we can actually do to stop it. Yeah, and also how it's impacted my life. I've been in the Climate Academy for 2 years now. I've been able to interview MEPs in the European Parliament. I've been able to go to Varese. I was there a few weeks ago in northern Italy to interview like the artists and scientists and speak in front of the head of education of the region, and interact with students of the area to try and push this climate academy further in other schools. And yeah, the goal of it is to try and improve this education and to provide a better understanding of what climate change is in reality. And this has followed me throughout my life, not just in Climate Academy, but throughout my school career, in various initiatives that I've led or been part of, where between like small clubs that I've been part of or led, or now I'm act as head of the environment for all the European schools, which represents 30,000 students over Europe. So this education has been very meaningful for me, as has provided a much stronger understanding of what I should be focusing my energy on. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, Byron. So in Rwanda, Anderson is showing us how young people can act entrepreneurship. Anderson, you've founded a local solution to the textile industry's huge carbon footprint. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your project is and why you've initiated it?
Okay, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Perfectly, yeah.
Yeah, so like I mentioned to you, but I think I'm gonna start again. First of all, the idea came when our instructor was telling us a little bit, sorry, a little bit about climate change in Africa, and he was like, we are having a lot of climate change and climate pollution, and he was like, do you really even know one of the causes of those?
Oh no, we've lost her at a cliffhanger, I think.
Things so increases our waste management, cost management, and everything. So I was like, is that really serious? So I was like, let me go check it out, because I do like to do research. And then I had
Okay, we're having a few connection problems today. Anderson,
those actually.
Sorry to
What?
interrupt you, but you keep cutting out a little bit, so we're not getting a nice flow, and I think we're missing a lot of important details of what you're saying.
Oh, my internet?
Yeah, I think so.
How about now?
It seems better. It seems better. So can you start a little bit more from the beginning? So what was it that your teacher had asked you?
Yes, my teacher was telling us about the climate change in Africa, and also telling us that one of the causes is the waste materials which come from European countries and the other countries which are dumped in Africa, but mostly the waste which coming from textile. So I had to do my own research, and I found that they actually send 200 tons of textile waste, and which some of them are sold as secondhand clothes, but mostly others are to be disposed in Africa. And also those secondhand clothes, when we wear them, they will also be disposed in Africa. So it was like, this is having a lot of impact, because it shows that 1.4 billion of greenhouse gases are being emitted by those textile industries, and which is also affecting our country and our continent. So I was like, we have to do something about it, even if it's a very huge context. But I was like, at least in my country, we can try and see how we can solve it. So we had a group in entrepreneurship course or class. Then we had to think about a business which can actually be solving that problem a little bit. But we found that in Rwanda, there's what we call made in Rwanda clothes. It's an industry, textile industry, which is producing clothes which are locally made. But then that solution is not really helping, because a lot of people can't afford it. So they still, the low income earners and other people still desire the second-hand clothes. So despite our country trying to reduce their importation, but still you find that no matter how their prices may increase, still people desire it. And from our research, people claim that actually those made in Rwanda clothes are not It doesn't have variety. They are too similar. They are not that much unique, and of course high prices. So we thought about taking the textile waste, because even in Rwanda, there's a lot of waste from textile industries which are just being disposed. And we thought about taking that waste, or actually working with the disposing management in maybe in Africa, those which are being imported, so that we can transform or recycle those clothes into the new made ones, so that people can actually wear it again. It can be reducing our cost of management, waste cost management, but also it can be helping our environment and reducing the air pollutions and everything. So that's where the idea came, and that's all about my business project.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Anderson. All the best with it. Okay, so I mentioned before that one of News Decoder's projects is to develop a climate journalism curriculum for young people all around the world called Empowering Youth Through Environmental Storytelling. We're actually working together with the Climate Academy, who Valentina mentioned before. But the precursor to EYES was called WOW, The Writings on the Wall, which was managed by Karo. So Karo was working for News Decoder on this, but now Karo, you work in as a sustainability consultant, focusing on nature conservancy, nature-based solutions, regenerative agriculture, and carbon offsets. What are your thoughts on what has just been shared now by the students? What are your thoughts on real climate action?
Yeah, I was making some notes. All these topics are very hot right now, especially after the COPs. Well, besides me working in nature-based solutions and regenerative agriculture, I'm also following policies and COPs and what is happening overall in the world. So all the topics mentioned are crucial. I mean, of course, there's so many crucial topics on climate change. It's hard to pinpoint which ones are the most important. But definitely everything resonates with what has been discussed during, let's say, recent COPs, right? Unfortunately, Sarah and Candelaria were cut, but I was really curious of what they would say about the indigenous voices, because this there was again at both COPs, COP 16, biodiversity COP, and now COP 29, the indigenous voices part was complicated, right? As someone mentioned already, that indigenous people are the people at the forefront of protecting environment, but they are omitted in the conversations or disregarded their needs, not only in politics but precisely in the projects that I work in conservation projects. Indigenous peoples are taken advantage of more often than not, and they are usually left with no choice, right? When the governments and the companies are pushing on them to use their land, to sell carbon credits, for example, right? So there's so many dimensions of how indigenous voices are disregarded, and especially the work and the service that they provide for all of us by protecting the environment. I don't know if we will be coming back to Sarah and Candelaria, but I can continue now talking about the other issues. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe actually then we can go back to Sarah and Candelaria, and then we can come back to you again, Karo. But on that topic, that's exactly right. So Candelaria, first, maybe you can, as you got a little bit cut off before, sorry about that. You can tell us a little bit more about your experience in Baku, and then actually it'd be great to hear from you both about, yeah, how is this seen, what Karo was just saying, how is this seen in Colombia? Are there local initiatives that are working with or initiated by Indigenous people? But I'll ask you to start, Candelaria, and then we can go from there.
Okay, so as I was trying to say, in COP29 in Baku, I interacted a lot. Well, I talked with one of the people that's trying to like talk to youth for next year's COP in Brazil. And what I was trying to say is that they want to make it a lot more physical. Like we talk a lot about climate change and about deforestation and a lot about these topics, but how many of us have actually seen a forest that's completely cut down? How many of us actually interact with a lot of the big topics that we discuss at these COPs? So one of the big things that they want to do is specifically youth, try to show them what's actually happening, that they see what climate change is doing to the. And on the indigenous thing, I met a girl from Brazil that was an indigenous English or Spanish. We had to have a translator. But what she was trying to say is that she went to COP and she's been to a couple COPs, I think 2 or 3, where she's trying to what's happening, to advocate for not only herself but for her people who are suffering a lot. They live in the Amazon and they're finding that the animals and insects that are there don't have a home, so they themselves don't have food or a lot of the resources because of climate change.
Yeah, like we have to put into action like everything that's been told. So many of these people that are part of an indigenous community like need to be present on these types of things, because it's like a really clear and good perspective on how can they impact climate change or nature and how can we help through them. So it's basically like we have to take into account how are they working and also how can we help them so that they can help us.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. We might come back to that. I'm sure there's lots of questions that are popping up, but I've just seen that Arohi, our last student panelist, has made it. Welcome, Arohi.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a shame that you've missed the interesting discussion so far. But I wanted to ask you, Arohi, so you've personally organized campaigns at home in is it Navi Mumbai, where you're living?
Yeah.
And that you've been a part of a campaign against plastic and closely worked in preserving your neighborhood mangroves, which you say are almost the lungs of the city of Navi Mumbai. So how do you encourage others to act on climate change?
All right, so before I delve into that, I would like to explain a little bit about what exactly mangroves mean to us over there. So Mumbai is a very industrial city, so to say, with very high levels of pollution. It's a hotspot to say so. And mangroves as plants give a lot of oxygen. So for a city that is so prone to pollution, mangroves mean a lot. And the place I used to live in was very, very close to the mangroves at the proximity of almost 50 meters, that's it. So we faced a very frequent problem of snakes coming into our society, and a lot of it used to stink in times when the pollution levels used to be way too high. So people over there decided that we need to cut down the mangroves at least for a few meters away from our society so that it doesn't stink, and we can solve the problem of snakes. And this is where the entire discussion started, because my own school was barely a kilometer away. And we've been staying there for so long, had been taught what mangroves mean to us, because they are the source of wildlife, they're the source of oxygen, and we can't just do away with them. And that's where this entire enthusiasm for me started to preserve these mangroves. And though I was a very young child, I might say I was in grade 3, grade 2, but it was a movement that my school started against the people who were for cutting down mangroves. And we organized nature walks, we organized awareness campaigns, we protested against the people, of the community who were supporting the cause of cutting down mangroves. And this is how this entire discussion started. So climate change, I would say, is like a chain, and it starts from the smallest thing to the largest. And we as students don't hold the power to make large-scale decisions, but what we can make is make our community aware of what climate means to us and what will happen if it's not there, in its absence. And mangroves, wildlife, everything that's supporting us here
if we do away with them, it would cause such a drastic change in our lives, such a magnificent uh, change that we can't even imagine. So that is something, that is where I came from, and my climate journey started. So climate action for me is the smallest change making the largest impact.
Thank you so much. And that perfectly ties us back into the poll question that we had at the beginning. And we've touched on it a little bit, which is, are individual lifestyle changes impactful? And I wanted to ask for all of your opinions on that, actually, is that these small changes, what do you all think about that, these individual changes? I'll start with you, Valentina, and then we'll go round.
Okay, perfect. I think there's a lot of value in individual action and in like small things you do within yourself. But obviously, if I pick to eat potatoes over meat, and Jeff Bezos can pick to, donate 300, like these politicians have a lot more power. These CEOs, these billionaires have a lot more power than you and me could ever have. So I think individual action is important, but we shouldn't be disillusioned to think that it's enough to solve it, and we shouldn't be kind of accepting this story that's being fed to us that if I bike to school every day, which I have done for like the past 10 years, I am doing my part to solve the climate crisis. I think it is important, but it's quite frankly not enough, especially since we're being fed that this green transition is happening when in reality our climate emissions are only rising. And we keep being told that there's going to be change, but in reality, it's only getting worse. So I think this focus on individual action makes us think that things are happening, but in reality, we're still seeing these leaders don't give so much money in subsidies to fossil fuels, and these CEOs continue to pick what's more profitable over what impacts these indigenous communities or the people in the global south. It's continuously putting profit over the environment. That's the real issue, at least to me, and what I've learned through my work with the Climate Academy. So yeah, that's my little input on that.
Thank you. Yeah, great. And I mean, maybe, Arohi, maybe you didn't just mean individual lifestyle changes. Maybe you also mean small changes such as, telling one person about what climate change means and what will happen if we surpass 1.52 degrees, right? Maybe you also meant that. I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts on this?
Thank you for what everyone has said or shared so far. I think that there needs to be collective action. I agree with what Valentina has said. Obviously, everyone needs to be passionate. Everyone needs to put in the effort, the single step, be more sustainable. However, governments and policymakers have to drive this movement. They have to enforce the policies that will start that can improve our environment. Because if I'm become vegan or I use less of electricity or something, but the governments aren't enforcing the policies to improve this, then it's just me trying to go against this big extractive economy and system.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Emma. Anderson, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. I also believe that the climate action has to be implemented, and like she mentioned, it's actually better when we have the government support, when the government is implementing in its policies at a larger part, because as an individual you may try your best, like the first question you asked us, like starting your lifestyle to reduce what your waste and try recycling. But I believe it can make a bigger impact when the government is the one implementing the strategies and working with the firms and like those partnerships. But also I do believe that it always starts with a person. Like if the government is doing those actions and as an individual you are also trying in your lifestyle to make a little bit changes, I think it can contribute a lot. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So it all ties in together in a way. They stand hand in hand. Karo, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking?
Of course, I agree with all of this. I believe that, well, individual actions are the most important in a sense that they change societal norms, which is very important as well. But when it comes to like actions that would be more powerful, that would bring concrete change, if if I could list the three top ones, well, the first one, it was already mentioned by Valentina, I believe, is to push politicians, right? To expect from them more, to raise your voices, especially as youth. This does work. It just has to, it has to happen, but definitely political involvement does work, because if we do not involve ourselves, then politicians, they do whatever they want or what they are told to do. And they are influenced by what we expect because we are the ones voting for them. So let's not forget that we do have power. As maybe some of you have seen, that boycotts do work, bringing up all the wrongdoings of corporations, they do work. So it's all about collective like shaming and gossiping, basically. Just bringing to the spotlight the wrongdoings of corporations, because at the end of the day, they also care about their consumers. And third one, like Arohi, if I'm pronouncing it properly, I'm sorry, explained what she has been doing is all the local initiatives. Because of course the global issue is too overwhelming, but we can focus more locally and have an actual impact on our community, whether it's, I don't know, our neighborhood of 3 blocks of flats, or maybe our village, or even a city. But that's where we can have like a real impact, even if it's something small as, I don't know, planting flowers, or like any pollinator gardens, or it can be something bigger, like a bigger organized action, but then of course you just need more people. So yeah, I would say these are the three: engaging in politics, shaming corporations, and engaging yourselves in local initiatives.
Great. It's great to get a summary. Feels manageable. Yeah, Valentina, over to you, and then I'll ask Sarah, Candelaria, and Arohi for their thoughts. Yeah, Valentina.
I want to say quickly that I completely agree. I think that collective action makes a huge difference. And we've seen in history how when students or when people go out into the streets and protest, it makes a huge difference. When we put pressure on our politicians or on these CEO owners, it does work. It does work. It's just important that we have a background of an understanding of what's actually happening and what we need to fight for, so that our individual action and our voice has a lot of impact as long as we use it the right way. And instead of, I mean, I was vegan, I'm vegetarian, but I was vegan for 5 years. And that's amazing. And I think it's amazing to do these kind of like individual actions. But if we focus our efforts and our on bringing together a community that understands what the real issue is and how we can solve it, that like makes a big difference, I think, more than other things that I've focused on, me personally focused on in the past.
Sarah, Candelaria, what are you thinking here? What about those top 3 ways of creating change that Karo has summarized for us?
Well, okay. I feel that individual action is extremely important because it not only teaches us what is that there is things wrong, that there is climate things and there are climate problems that are happening that impulse us to take action, let it be small or let it be big. If we know what's happening, people will start to care, because a lot of communities and a lot of people don't realize that this is happening. And a lot of people, like what I said a lot at COP, was if you don't know, why would you care? If you don't know that there are people suffering, if you don't know that the planet is suffering, why should you care? Why should people recycle if they don't know what's happening? So I feel like that's a really big part of everything that's happening in big communities, like even climate leaders and like politicians. A lot of people don't get informed. And that's why I think education is a really big part of all climate change and all of these small actions, is people need to be informed. And that's why a lot of us can help, and big communities can make big changes if they are all informed, and a lot of ideas can come from that.
Yeah, like it's really important to work as a team, but also to like do it like for yourself. Like you have to start yourself, you know? Like if you can start, you can motivate others to do it. But it has to come like from you and from what you know and what you will learn. Because you also have to be like open about the things that they will like come to you. Like not just to be in there, to also let it like flow in some way that you can talk.
You're cracking
like,
up a little bit. Sorry. I wonder if it helps if you turn your camera off, actually, and maybe we'll get a little bit of a better connection there.
Thank you. Yeah, we were saying basically like it's really important to be open to people, like just not to keep yourself like close on what you know, but also be able to share your thoughts, but also receiving them, to work in a better way, like to work in a community and be able to work with people all around the world.
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps that echoes what you were saying, Arohi. What do you think about what has just been said? Anything to add?
Yes. So basically, I feel like I'm quoting someone right here, that the biggest threat to our planet is our belief that someone else will come and save it. So while I agree that, politicians and, will really help us, political support will help us make more long-term sustainable changes in our environment. But at the end of the day, all we can do is petition, protest, and pray for their support. Regardless of what we do, we need a larger scale audience together who can protest with us to garner attention. And that, I believe, will start with community changes at the smallest level. I truly believe that individual responsibility, a collective responsibility of us as a community, will really help us better the environment, to say so. Because at the end of the day, charity begins at home. And these small changes together, if only we can spread awareness in every part of the country, if we all of us start taking collective responsibility, if, as it was rightly said, if our community, as small as it is, be it an apartment, a village, a city, if all of us starts taking responsibility for that little region that we are responsible for, then it can become a large scale motion. And then it is something that we can look forward to as political support. Starting, it's very difficult to get politicians with us to make these changes, because at the end of the day, like it was rightly said, that profits are given more importance than larger sustainable changes for the environment. The future is not being looked upon, but the present is all about profits. So for us, we need to start with changes that will first help us, and then look forward to what we can do to make this a larger scale impact. So what I truly believe is start from home, and then let the motion grow, let the protest grow, let the impact grow, and that is when we can get the true support and make changes not only within our country, within our city, within our region, but on a global scale.
Thank you. What was that quote that you said at the beginning there about waiting for somebody else to come save us?
So the biggest threat to our planet is our belief that someone else will come save it.
That's great. And I guess then the question that I'd like to ask all of you, and we'll do a sort of brief round if you feel like saying something, so then we can get to some questions. But I guess as the youth, we are sort of hoping that you guys will save us in the future. Unfortunately, it falls on your shoulders. How do you each feel about that? Do you feel angry? Do you feel empowered? How does that that responsibility feel? Put your hand up if you want to say something, and we'll do a bit of a round. Silence. Okay, Anderson.
Thank you. I actually believe in the power of youth, because first of all, youth are people who are more open-minded, if I may say, because most of the older generation, most of them, they are conservatives, and they are complicated in understanding the trendings, the technology, and everything. So I believe youth, we are the change, we are the future. Like in the coming days, our parents and others, they will no longer be able to walk or do something. So if, like, what we start now, we contribute to how we live in the future and our kids and everything. So I believe the youth, it's the starting point in everything, and much they are qualified because of their open-minded and the the thirst for knowledge, the curiosity and everything that helps them to keep going. So when they say that they depend on the youth, I actually feel empowered and motivated. Thanks.
Good. That's optimistic. Anyone else? Valentina, and then I'll.
I do think there's some sense of empowerment to it, which I feel as well, but I think most of all for me, it is a bit disappointing to hear that the blame or like the responsibility is just shifted down to us. I think we all have an equal responsibility at this point, and yes, we're the future, and I completely agree with that. And it is empowering for me to know that we do have a voice that we need to exercise, and that we have a lot of responsibility as we're going to be the next people in power. But I do think that it's we can't just keep shifting responsibility to the next generation. And now the deadlines keep approaching us, and we're still not seeing a change. So we follow with Climate Academy, we follow these X numbers, which are numbers saying how much we need to decrease our emissions by every year, that are backed by lots and lots of scientists. And following those numbers, the 1.5 deadline is passed already. The 2-degree deadline is like very, very, very quickly approaching. So we have very little time if we want to meet the goals that we're apparently supposed to meet. And it just puts a lot of pressure on us. And we're still pretty young, so we don't really have all the materials to be able to do it and do it well. So it's a lot of pressure. But yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Valentina. Arohi?
Yes, so I would like to start by saying I completely agree with what Valentina said, that the responsibility has been shifted on our shoulders, that we take the blame for what was done in the past. But now that the damage is done, and to a very great extent, which is irreversible, and cut X numbers are really threatening, and we're encroaching on forbidden territory where we don't know, uncharted waters where we don't know how to find our stead. I truly believe that we, as the youth, as Anderson said, we're open-minded. It's sort of driving us, the fact that we have the power to change within our own hands. And I would also like to say that because we're the newer generation, fortunately, we've been blessed with the availability of resources. Because today, if I want to spread awareness about what is happening in my community, and if I want to stop it, at the tip of my fingertips, I can gather a huge crowd of people who will stand with me for the same cause, which is something that I'm very, very grateful for, because in the past, it would have been a huge problem to gather the same support. People are so much more aware. Education about climate, about what we can do to change, is so much more readily available than it was in the past. I have numbers, I have statistics with me. I know exactly how much I can cut down, how much I can improve to make not encroach on the 2-degree deadline or the 1.5 degree that we're slowly approaching, and how to stay within our limits. So as the youth, I would say, though the responsibility lies on us, I truly believe that we can look forward to a future where we can make a sustainable change.
Thank you. All right, so to the audience, it's time now to put any questions or comments in the Q&A. There is one here that I want to put to you all. How concerned are you all about the impact of false information on people's ability to stay informed and take action? Karo, I'm going to start with you here, if you don't mind, and then we can do a little bit of a round.
Yeah, unfortunately, well, I don't know if you have been seeing, but recently it has been a growing issue. The spread of false information, especially around elections, around political agendas. There's no easy way to fight that. Because of course, we have the science, we have the scientists, and we have people talking about all of these issues. We have all the proof, but it's not about proof. It's about personal beliefs, emotions. And so when politicians or companies are playing on our emotions or on our daily lives, it's hard to know what is real or what is not, especially as you guys said, with the lack of education. And it's fair, not everybody has to be educated on every possible topic. It's supposed to be the responsibility of politicians and the society to understand certain things as a whole. I don't know how we could change that. I feel like it's getting a bit out of control in certain parts of the world. But then at the same time, you can see more and more people getting involved in actual action besides the spread of false information.
Yeah.
Beyond.
Thank you. Yeah, do you have thoughts on disinformation and this in limiting people's, I guess, desire to act? Okay, Amma, do you have thoughts?
Yes, I agree with what everyone has said so far. I think that no matter what era we are, like in the 19th century or wherever it has been, there's always been some form of false information, propaganda being spread, and I'm not agreeing with it. I don't think it's a great thing. Even like in today's, like today, we've seen just how like the political landscape is in the United States with all the lies being spread. And I feel like that's always going to be there. It's definitely increasing now, but I think it's up to the individual to have that thirst for knowledge and thirst for what is right and that passion for obviously being more sustainable and like just figuring out what's going on in the world. And I think someone said earlier, like, why our youth is like the future is because we don't rely on the government for all the information. The government can continue to lie about anything, but we have everything at our fingertips. So it's up to us to go out into the world, use the internet to find whatever we're looking for.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Sara, Candelaria, we can come back to you.
Okay, so speaking a little more on disinformation, there is so much information out there, and social media is a really big tool, but also one of the biggest enemies of disinformation. So I feel like a lot of people get confused they try to educate themselves in the simplest way possible, that let it be through Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever they may use. And people think that things are worse than they actually are or better than they actually are. So people either get really scared or don't really care about what's happening. So, and a lot of people don't really have that initiative and just stumble upon a lot of the information that is released online and through these social media. And well, yeah, people don't really know what to trust anymore. Like even me myself, we don't really know what to trust. We don't know if the information that we do find is true, if it's not, if it's dramatized, or if it's simplified and not dramatic enough. So yeah.
Yeah, we have like for this type of things, we have to like to go back to basics. Like the best way to understand nature, like, is to feel it, to go outside, to see actually what's happening. Because nowadays there's a lot of disinformation on many people on social media. So it's really important for us like to be like that first person to see it and not just to stay with others people opinion, but to like give that first step.
Yeah, interesting thoughts. Thank you. Anybody else from the yeah, Amma.
Yes, just to add, I just realized that even though there's like so much information about like climate change and so many things, people are still not interested because maybe it hasn't affected them on a personal level or they still don't believe in it. And I think what Sarah was saying earlier, like maybe it's through taking people to all these affected places like the Amazon rainforest and like seeing like the impact of climate change, that maybe that could change people's beliefs because we could have all the information in the world, but we still don't have people interested in climate change.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, we have suddenly a lot of questions in the Q&A that I think are really good. I'm not sure if we'll get through all.
I am trying maybe to respond to some of them in text.
Perfect.
Because, yeah.
Perfect. You're doing a great job. Thanks, Karo. There is one in particular that I want to ask for your thoughts. What are your thoughts about companies that work with carbon capture and sequestration? Is it enough? Again, raised hands is fine. Maybe Karo, you want to start with it, and then others can think.
Yes. I'm very passionate about carbon capture and storage. Well, it is my personal opinion, but it's backed also by other people, and it's an opinion that is kind of agreed on among like nature-based solutions project developers. Well, carbon capture is this kind of easy fix type of thing. But actually, it doesn't make that much sense when you take into consideration that, you know, all the energy that you have to use, all the resources you have to use just to capture that carbon, which is not that much at the end of the day. And you have to do it continuously. So you're continuously using all these resources. And it kind of creates a new industry, right? That is not that necessary at the end of the day. All this money that goes towards carbon capture could be invested in nature-based solutions, in regenerating environments, as Aro was mentioning, mangroves, like all these critical, oh my God, what's the word? Critical environments, let's say, that help the most, that do the most work, basically for us. All we need to do is protect them, and the work is done. So again, let's imagine all this money, instead of going towards carbon capture, going towards communities, towards environments. In my opinion, that makes much, much more sense.
Arohi, go ahead, and then Amma.
Yes, so I completely agree with what was said, that carbon capture has become an industry altogether. And the way people describe it, it's more of a band-aid solution to the problem that we have today. That we're not limiting carbon emissions, we're just finding a different way to dispose them. And this is also has a lot of potential threats, storage, from to the extremely high expenditure that we're spending on this, instead of investing the same money into making more sustainable changes that will help a more long-term solution than a short-term one. We don't need a band-aid for climate change. We need a permanent solution to it. And carbon capture is not it. So instead of that, industries should focus more on using cleaner fuels, switch to renewable energy, something of that sort, which has a more long-term impact, like instead of carbon capture and sequestration that are just band-aids onto what is the current problem.
Thank you. Amma?
Yes, I agree with what Ara just said. I think we need to solve this issue using systems thinking and actually solve it from the bud, then solving the issue once it's already like polluted the air, then as you said, using a band-aid to fix the issue. And we should shift to more renewable ways.
Great, thanks. Any other thoughts from the panelists? Yeah, Valentina.
I can just add quickly that I agree with you guys, and that I think that it's a very simplistic solution to an extremely big problem, and that it feels as a way for politicians and people to deflect, like to say, oh, but we have the solution. But actually, to have it actually make an impact, you'd have to use preposterous amounts of it that isn't reasonable. So it's not really doing a lot, at least not compared to what they could be doing that would actively be making a difference.
Thank you. So there's a question here that maybe is a really good one to and apologies to everybody in the audience who's asked a question that we might not get to, that we probably won't get to. But this one asks, can you suggest some methods that we can follow in order to combat climate change on an individual level? This also brings us back to the beginning. We'll go around, and if each of you can maybe just say, one method from an individual level. Yeah, we can start with you, Valentina.
Okay, great. I would say educate yourself and protest.
Okay, Anderson. It can come in more words than that, of course. But yeah, thanks, Valentina. Yeah, and Anderson.
Okay. For me, I would say, firstly, in the objects we use, like don't use like a bottle and then you throw it away. If it can be used again, reuse it. And also recycling. And actually, maybe because of that project of textile, I also like to do it on my clothes. When I'm tired of it, I can change the style, but instead of throwing it away. So those are just simple methods, but which are really helping you to contribute to environmental conservation. Thanks.
Great. Arohi.
Yes. So following up on our discussion of false information and everything that's available out there, which to a very great extent is false, I would suggest take up changes that you know will make an impact. Be selfish and think what will help you in the future. If you think today using plastic will impact your future generations to come, then stop. Stop use and throw. Stop anything that is not sustainable, that is not biodegradable, and which you think will make a bad impact on the future that we have in front of us. Make changes as the smallest of changes. Segregate dry and wet waste. Do not pollute the oceans. Do not throw plastic around. Do not pollute the environment. Try to do carpool, smallest of changes that you can make today that will help your future. Stick to the basics if you do not have the information to make large scale changes. Support causes which you think will help you. Stand for what is right. Petition for agendas that will help you and your friends and your community. And that's it. That's all we can do as students today. Unless we rise to a position that is in power, we can only hope.
Great. This is great energy. Keep it going, guys. Sarah and Candelaria.
Okay, I would say like to be like inform yourself, like don't wait for other people to like come to you to talk to you. Like you make that first step, and you have to be able to look around and be able to say, I'm gonna do this, like I'm actually gonna do this.
And yeah, it's like a lot of us with when we talk about climate change, it's proposals. Like we think we should do this or we should do that. We should actually inform ourselves, find the information, and try to execute our ideas. Because politicians have the money, but we also can talk to friends, we can talk to our parents, we can find people environment, not only within the world, but within our communities. Like small steps can be made, and you have to take that initiative to actually see them through.
Great, thank you. Amma?
I think another like practical solution is like shopping locally and like sustainable brands. This could reduce transportation emissions from transportation and storaging. Maybe, and I think Valentina does this, just even changing your transportation to like bikes to cycling. These are just like little individual things you could do that will definitely make a difference.
Great. And Karo?
Oh my God, so sorry, I was responding to the
Oh,
questions.
good, you're answering all the questions. Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry, what's the question?
The question is, what can we do? What can we each do on an individual level to make a change?
Well, I don't think I have anything like particular to say because we've already touched on all these different aspects that I absolutely agree with. But at the end of the day, what we can all do is our best, you know, to not put too much pressure on ourselves because we all have also our own lives, our own worries. People around the world have different issues. So the best we can do is the best that we are able to do.
Great, thank you all. And at News Decoder, we try to encourage students to use the tools of journalism to understand these kinds of topics, to communicate these topics. So this was a really nice way to end the webinar on. The audience members, if you found this interesting, and the panelists as well, the project that I'm helping to manage called EYES that I touched on at the beginning, we are holding a webinar on the 9th of December. Scan the QR code to find the details. That'll take you to the Zoom registration link. So you can scan that QR code if you like. There we'll be talking more about how can we teach climate change and how can we empower youth through the information and through the tools of journalism. So we're designing a curriculum in climate journalism, and through this webinar, we'll discuss with climate educators and an environmental journalist on what needs to happen in schools and in education. So hopefully that was a long enough share for you. We're going to do the poll one more time just to see whether your answer changed. So, okay, so another 20 seconds just to end here. The question is exactly the same. Do you think individual lifestyle changes can have a meaningful impact on climate change? Another 15 seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, interesting that it changed a little bit. So we had, I think before we had 90% yes and 10% no, and now we have 83% yes and 17% no. So we're going to have another webinar with audience members to find out why that changed some other time.
Maybe
all right,
more
great.
people voted, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our audience members, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.